Good morning, everybody. I hope you're well. Thanks for joining me this morning. So today is Module 3, and Module 3 is all about creating an additional story for your design. So the house we're drawing is a 2-story house, but the principle for creating a first floor, a second floor and beyond is exactly the same. So I'll show you how you can copy your ground floor to create an extra floor. So I'll show you also how you can then adapt the first floor layout. I'll also show you how you can draw some different roof types. So we'll have a go at drawing a lean-to roof, an apex roof and an apex valley roof. So that's the scope of what we'll cover during today's training. So in exercise 11, we're going to create our first floor, our additional story for our house. So rather than having to draw each story of your building from scratch, you can copy and adapt your ground floor plan to create an upper floor. So in this exercise, we're going to copy the ground floor plan and create a first floor plan, but you can create multiple floors in this way. So if you had a three-story townhouse, you could copy your ground floor plan twice to create those additional stories. Or it might be that you copy your ground floor plan to create your first floor plan, and then you copy your first floor plan to create your second floor plan. So the first thing we need to do when creating a new level is to create what we call the ground floor level. So each level of the building will have what we call a level, and the levels tell PlansXpress the order and the height of each of your levels. And from your levels, it can then stack them together to create your elevations and also your 3D views of your building. So on the Views and 3D tab, which is where we are already, you will see a button called Level. So it's the 5th button from the left. If you click on where it says Level, then this Level dialog box opens up. So there's just a few things we need to check here. So first of all, the base height. So for the ground floor, the base height is simply ground level. So you can leave that set to 0. You can use the Tab key on your keyboard to move to the next input box. So if you press Tab, which is on the left-hand side of your keyboard, that will move you down to the next box. So the next box deals with the wall height. So our walls are 2,700 mil high. They're quite high walls. So simply type in the height of the walls. That's setting out the height of this particular level. Next, we have the level number. I guess we can press the Tab key to move to the next option. So ensure the level is set to 1 for your ground floor. So that's simply saying the ground floor is the first level in our building. The first floor will be level number 2. If we did a second floor, that would be level number 3, and so on. So it just tells PlansXpress the order in which to stack these different levels. Okay, so base height is 0 because it's the ground floor, so it's ground level. The wall height tells PlansXpress the height of the level, and then we are just giving it a number. So once those are set correctly, we click OK. And now PlansXpress is ready to define the level. So we're going to first of all have a look at the command window. So it's asking us to give a reference point. The reference point is a point that you can choose on the building, which is the same all the way through. So you're going to have the same reference point on the ground floor, on the first floor, second floor if you had one, and so on. The reference point again allows PlansXpress to stack the levels on top of each other to create those elevations and 3D views. So for this design, I would suggest that you use the bottom left-hand corner of your ground floor layout as your point of reference, because this is going to be the same on every story of the building. So all we need to do is find that endpoint on the bottom left-hand corner of our ground floor and left-click to select that as the reference point. So next, the command window tells us that we need to draw a box to define the level. So basically we're drawing a box around the ground floor plan to set the boundaries of the level so that PlansXpress knows what to include in this level. So what I would do is start above and to the left of the ground floor plan. You could do a much smaller box to define the level, but I would always err on the side of making the level bigger rather than smaller, so you don't accidentally miss anything out from your ground floor layout. So place your cursor above and to the left of the plans, then left click to place the first point of the box. And then as you move your cursor, you'll see that you are controlling the size and shape of this box, this boundary. So again, the boundary is just telling PlansXpress what to include in the level. So as I've done, move your mouse to the bottom right of the plans. Again, give yourself plenty of space around the edge of the layout. And then again, left click to place the second corner of that level boundary. After a moment, you'll see a pink box appears. That shows the boundary of your ground floor level. Okay, so we've now set up our ground floor level. So PlansXpress knows what we want to include in that level. The reference point, you can see there's a pink compass point on the bottom left of the plans there. That shows us the reference point, and it will use that to stack the different floors on top of each other. And when we first created the level, you'll remember we put in the base height, so where the level starts, and the wall height, so the top, where the level goes up to. And it will use all that information to create our lovely 3D views and elevations later on. So now we've defined that ground floor level, we can copy it and use it to create the first floor. If you click on the level, you'll get the dashed lines and you'll get those handles. That just shows you the level is selected. So that's great. So once it's selected, you need to click your scroll wheel on your mouse. So if you click the scroll wheel on your mouse, it brings up these middle click options. So there are different things you can do. And the one we want, the option we want, is the copy selection option. So if you click copy selection, PlansXpress then knows that we want to copy the level we've just selected. So it's asking for a reference point. When PlansXpress talks about reference points, it just means a point on the drawing that it can use as a reference. So in this case, it wants to know which part of the plans we want to place when we place our first floor plans, basically. So again, if we stick with the bottom left of the level, it tends to be the corner I work with, makes most sense to me. So if you find the bottom left corner of the level, you'll find an endpoint there. Click to select that as your reference point. Okay, so you'll see now, if you move your cursor around, that you are controlling the position of your first floor level. So it's creating a copy of the ground floor, and this is the first floor level we're going to place. So the command window is telling us give the point to copy it to. So where do we want to place it? So what I suggest you do is hover your cursor over the bottom right endpoint of the ground floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to place the first floor layout to the right of the ground floor layout. So if we find that endpoint on the bottom right hand corner of our ground floor plans, we can use that as the point we're going to place on our first floor plans. So to copy it, just click once more once you've found that endpoint, and then we get some copy plan options. So from here we can finish off creating our first floor level, and we can control which components we want to copy across to our first floor. So first of all, we are creating the level heights again. So the first option is the base height. So what's the base height of our first floor plan? Well, of course, the first floor starts where the ground floor ends, so 2,700 mil is correct. It's taken the wall height from our ground floor plan, so that's fine for our base height. Again, we can press the tab key to move along to the next option. So the next option is the wall height. Again, that's been copied from the ground floor level. It said, oh, well, if your ground floor walls are 2,700, then your first floor walls might be. But on this occasion, they're not. Let's say our first floor walls are 2,550. So simply type in the height of your first floor walls. So it might be the same as the ground floor. In some circumstances, it might be different, as in this case. So we've set the wall height for our first floor level, and then it's given it a number automatically. It's assuming this is level number 2, which is correct because the ground floor is level 1 and this is level 2. So that's absolutely fine. So that's the level defined and set up for our first floor. Now we can go through these options and decide which items we want to copy across. So first of all, there's the option of whether we want to copy the external walls. Well, that's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? So we'll leave that ticked. Then we can decide if we want to copy the doors within the external walls. So in this case, let's untick doors. We don't need any of those bifolds or front doors on our first floor layout. So untick doors to remove them from the first floor. The next option is windows. So do we want to copy the ground floor windows to the first floor? Leave that ticked for now, so they are copied across. You can always select and delete individual windows if you need to. So we'll leave windows ticked. We don't have any openings in this particular design, so we can ignore that option. Here you can fine-tune the wall height for the external walls. So if that needs to be different for the external walls than the internal walls, we've got 2 different options here. But we'll leave the external wall height set to 2550. And then the bottom option is to remove the foundations and footings. So of course your ground floor walls have got foundations and footings in there, and you're not going to want those in your first floor plan, so leave that ticked. Then have a little think about the internal wall options. So sometimes you might want to copy your internal walls. I'm going to say let's untick the internal walls on this occasion, so that those internal walls are stripped out for your first floor. Then, of course, all the other options are greyed out because they're not relevant if you're not having your internal walls. You could copy across your internal walls but remove any doors. You could copy across your internal walls but change the wall height if you needed to for those internal walls. Okay, so once you're happy with your selections, all you need to do is click OK. And after a few moments, your first floor level appears. So I'm going to drag my page to the left. So I'm going to hold down the mouse scroll wheel, and let's do it like that. Move my page to the left so that I can see my first floor plan. So you can see there the external walls have been copied, but the external doors have been removed. The internal walls have been stripped out, but the staircase has been left. So you can see there we've got the shell of our first floor plan, and you can see from the 3D view that PlansXpress has stacked that first floor on top of the ground floor to create the beginnings of our upstairs. So now we've done that work, let's save the project quickly. So if we go to the File menu and click, hold your cursor over Save and click Save As. And at the end of the file name here, we'll just update the number. So save it as Upton Fields 6, for example, and then click Save. So we've got that latest version of our drawing saved. Okay, so that's the beginning of our first floor, but of course we're going to need to adapt it a little bit to finish it off, basically. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to adapt the rear wall of our first floor plan, because in fact this wall is actually it goes straight across. We don't have the rear projection on our first floor because it's going to be a lean-to roof over this projection here. So the first thing we need to do is change the configuration of that rear wall of the house. So to do that, if we click on the rear wall on the right hand side, so we've left clicked on the wall to select it, you'll see the handles appear. So if we want to stretch that wall, what we're going to do is stretch this wall over to the left hand side. We can use this left hand handle to do that. So again, if you left click on the handle, move your cursor around, you can see that you're now controlling that end point of the wall. So what we want to do is stretch it over to the left hand side of the house. Find that perpendicular point. You remember, if you find a perpendicular point, you know your wall's going to be square. If you find a nearest snap point, it's not necessarily going to be square. So seek out that perpendicular snap point, and then once you've found it, left click to extend the wall. It might take a moment to redraw it, and then you can click elsewhere on screen to deselect that wall, to drop it. Okay, I'll just do that again for you, just to make sure you're clear on how to do it. So remember, if you make a mistake as well, press the undo button or press the escape key if you're getting a bit of a pickle in the middle of doing it. Press the escape key to drop what you're doing. Press the undo button if you need to go backwards. I just press the Control and Z keys on my keyboard, because remember, Control and Z undoes the last action as well. So click on the wall to select it. Then we get these handles at the end which allow us to stretch or trim the wall. So click on the blue handle on the left. So we're always clicking and releasing. We're not clicking and dragging at all. Move your cursor over to the left to find the left-hand wall. Find that perpendicular snap point and left click to stretch the wall. Okay, so we've done that, but of course we're going to need to get rid of the rear projection here. So we can click on the rear wall of the projection to select it, and then we can press the delete key on our keyboard to get rid of that wall. We've got this short stretch of wall on the right hand side of the projection. Again, left click to select it and press the delete key on your keyboard. Now this wall is slightly different. If you look at the left hand wall, we don't want to delete it, we just want to trim it. We want to make it a bit shorter. So again, left click to select the wall, and then click on the handle, the blue handle, or purple if it looks more purple on your screen. Click to select it, and again we can find the relevant snap point to trim that wall to. So find a perpendicular snap point on the rear wall of the house, then click to trim the wall. Okay, click anywhere else on screen to deselect the wall. So you can see how very quickly we have just adapted the walls there. If we have a look at the 3D model, so click and hold down your left mouse button to drag the model around. So there we go, we've changed the configuration of that rear wall of the first floor. But of course we need to add some windows onto here. So there are 4 more windows across the rear of the house to add. If I just bring up this diagram here, so you can see we've got 4 additional windows to place. The first window is 665mm from the left. So if we go back to PlansXpress, so let's say we want to place windows of the same specification as the ones we've already placed. So hopefully you can remember, if you want to use the same spec of window or the same spec of anything, you can click on the icon on the menu, and it will use PlansXpress will use the last used specification of window. So click on the window picture. It will automatically select the same type of window as we've already drawn, assuming that's the last type of window you've drawn. If you have drawn something else, if you've put a bay window in, for example, it will bring up the bay window specification, whatever is the last window spec you selected. So we said this window wants to be 665mm from the back left corner of the house. So I'll just go through the window placing options again. So remember, your cursor tells PlansXpress whether to measure from the external side of the wall or the internal side. Of course, depending on where your corners are, that will give different measurements. So make sure your cursor is placed over the external side of the wall. The justification tells PlansXpress whether to measure to the center or to one end of the window. In this case, we want to measure to the left-hand side of the window. Remember, the justification is different depending on where you're viewing it from. So in this case, we need to change justification to right. And there we can see it's now measuring to the left-hand side of the window, which is what we want. But the third thing we need to think about is which end of the wall PlansXpress is measuring from. So at the moment, it's measuring from the right, from that other window we've got placed here, you can see. We want it to measure from the left. So to change where the square brackets are, what we call the active dimension, we have to press the tab key on the keyboard. And you can see now the measurement is where we want it. So there's three things we've considered there. Where the cursor is placed, that controls the active measurement. Whether the justification of the window is set correctly. And then finally we press the tab key to make sure PlansXpress is measuring from the correct end of the wall. So once those three settings are correct, we can then type in the distance from that back left corner of the wall. So we're typing in 665 into the dimension box at the bottom right of the drawing area. And then when you place your cursor back on the wall, you'll see PlansXpress is now measuring 665 mm from the back left corner. So once the measurement is correct, we can left click to place the window. So let's go back to our diagram. So the next window is 900 mm from the window we've just placed. So PlansXpress will remember all of the settings we have just selected. So the justification is the same and the active dimension is in the same place. So it's all set up ready to measure and place the next window. So if we click into the dimension input box, type in 900, because at this time it's 900 mm from that left-hand window. This time you'll see it doesn't matter if your cursor is over the inside or the outside of the wall, of the external wall, because the dimension is exactly the same. So as long as you've got 900 mm between those two windows, left click to place the next window. Okay, the gap to the next window is 1110 mm. So we're going to repeat exactly the same process. It's all set up as it needs to be, so all we need to do, type into the dimension box 1110 mm, and then checking that dimension's in the right place, left click to place the window. And then the final window is again 900 mm from the window we've just placed. You can place it by eye if you can get it to say 900. If it's being a bit flighty, just type 900 into the dimension box and then again click to place the window. If your 3D view hasn't updated, you can just click the refresh button on the 3D view window and you'll see those windows appear. We've got one more window to place, and it's a window here above where the front door was. So I am going to click the right mouse button. Remember, whenever you right click, PlansXpress will do the last thing you've done. So we've just drawn a window, I right clicked, it's ready to draw another window. So this window is going to be 445 mm from the gable. So I'm just going to type in 445 into the input box. Press enter to register it. Okay, so the active dimension again is already in the right place, so I can just right click to place the window. Again, if it doesn't automatically appear on your 3D view, you can click refresh to make it appear. Okay, so we've added our windows. And then, of course, you can carry on placing your internal walls, putting the floor in, so it might be a suspended floor that you want to draw there. I won't do that now. In the instructions I send over to you later, it will talk about placing the floor and the walls, and you can have a go at doing that if you want. But what I'd like us to do is move on to drawing the roof, because that's obviously a key skill that we want you guys to be able to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save the drawing at this point. So I'm going to save as number 7. So exercises 12 and 13 have been re-recorded using the latest roof tools in PlansXpress 2022. So you may notice some slight differences in the toolbars and menus and in the appearance of items on screen. So in exercise 12 we're going to draw the lean-to roof on the ground floor. We're going to start by specifying the roof. Because there are now so many different roof tools available, they've been placed on their own tab. So to draw anything to do with roofs, you're not going to use the architectural tab, you're going to use the roofs and attics tab. So if we go to roofs and attics, you'll see on the left hand side we have a roofs drop down menu. So within the roofs menu you'll see that we have tiled, cut and truss roofs. We have small versions of the cut and truss roofs. Those are suitable for putting on dormers and bays and so on. We have a SIPS roof, we have flat roofs and flat roofs for bays and so on. We also have some roofing accessories in there for the various roof types, and we have the lead box gutters at the bottom. So for our lean-to roof we're going to select the top option for a tiled cut roof, and we're going to select the typical 30-degree cut roof template. So you'll see there's a variety of different pictures set up in there already. Just select the one that's closest to the roof that you're drawing. So if we select typical 30-degree cut roof, and the roof dimensions wizard will open up. So remember, only the dimension input boxes highlighted in yellow will impact on your drawing in PlansXpress. So that includes all of the dimensions on the first page. The pitch of the roof is already set as per the template that you selected, but if you needed to tweak that slightly, then of course you can do that at this point. On this first page of the dimensions wizard, you can also edit the thickness of the roof covering, in other words the tiles, and also the thickness of the roof structure. And as those input boxes are highlighted in yellow, you can see that those will impact on the 3D model of the building, so you can tweak those if needed. So if we click next, on the next page there's another series of dimensions that you will want to consider in terms of the drawing of your roof. So you will want to review the soffit widths both to the gables and to the eaves, and you will also want to just have a think about the height of your barge boards and fascias and the thickness of your barge boards and fascias as well. All of those can be reviewed at this point. We do have a number of different editing tools now which allow you to change certain elements once the roof has been drawn, but as always it's easier to get it right first time. So if you're happy with those dimensions, we can click next. You'll see the next screen relates to flat roofs and gablet roofs, often called Dutch gables. So there's nothing here that's relevant to drawing a lean-to roof, so if that's the case, if you're drawing a roof and these screens aren't relevant, just skip over them, that's fine. On page 4 there's one dimension left which will have an impact on your drawing, and that's the tile overhang beyond the fascia board. So if you need to tweak that detail, then you can do that now. So once you've done that, we can click accept defaults because we have edited everything that will have an impact on the drawing. The final screen just relates to finishes, and that's if you're estimating your roof. Of course you'll want to consider those things. So if we just click accept defaults, so we've specified the roof, and now the roof type window opens up. So this is where you select the roof type that you want to draw. So as you can see, we've got quite a long list of different roof types. You can draw anything from an apex roof to a hipped roof, apex roofs with barn hips, mansard roofs, gambrel roofs, hipped roofs with gablets, and lean-to or mono-pitch roofs. So as you've probably guessed, we are going to select the lean-to or mono-pitch roof option. You can click anywhere in this box on the image or on the text or in the space to select the option. And then the roof drawing method window opens up. So when you're drawing a lean-to roof, there are multiple different ways that you can draw the roof. So what I'd suggest you do is take a minute or two to read through the guidance notes on this screen to help you develop your understanding of when you need to use each of the different drawing methods. So I'll just go through and give you a quick summary of when you would select each of the three options. So the first option, which is to draw a rectangular section of roof, this method is suitable when you're drawing a roof which is rectangular but isn't sitting on walls on all sides. So as in the case of a porch or a lean-to roof which is leaning against a wall, then you would select the rectangular section of roof drawing method, assuming that it's a rectangular roof. The second option, to draw a roof the shape of a closed circuit of walls, this method can be used for mono-pitched roofs. So this is a one-click method of placing a roof, so it's really straightforward. As I say, it can be used for mono-pitched roofs, and the reason it's suitable for those is because they sit on a complete circuit of walls. So a lean-to is often three sides of a rectangle leaning against another circuit of walls. So the software would get confused if you try to use that option for a lean-to roof, but that middle option works for a mono-pitched roof. The third option is to draw a polyline to trace the external points of a roof. So you can use that option if you are drawing a more complex shape of lean-to. So again, one that's not necessarily sitting on all of the walls within your building. So for example, if you have a wraparound lean-to roof, that would be the option you'd select for that. Okay, so for our simple rectangular lean-to roof, we're going to select the top option. As before, you can click anywhere. You can click on the radio button here, or the diagram, or the text to make your selection. And once you've done that, click Finish. And PlansXpress is now ready to draw the roof. There are 3 simple steps to drawing a lean-to roof using the rectangular method. What you're going to do is mark out 2 opposite corners of the roof, of the rectangle that makes up the roof, and then you're just going to click to indicate where the eaves line is on the roof. So as always, follow the instructions on the command window. They'll prompt you as to where you need to click. So the first instruction there is to give the first corner of the roof, and it reminds us there to use the outer face of the wall, so the external point of the wall. So I'm going to zoom in on our ground floor plan here so I can see it a little better. So because I can clearly see and click on this top left corner and bottom right corner of the lean-to, those are the points that I'm going to use to mark out my rectangle. If I selected on the, if I started on the top right corner and came down here, it's a bit trickier to find a snap point here for this corner of the roof. So before you click on the points, just pause for a moment and think about which are the easiest corners to click on, because depending on the layout of your roof, some are easier to click on than others. So if we start by clicking on the top left corner of the roof, you'll probably find an endpoint to snap on. Left click to place that first corner. Then the command window tells us to give the opposite corner of the roof. So again, we're going to find that opposite corner of the rectangle, and as always, we're clicking on the external points on the walls there. Again, once you've found that endpoint, click to place the opposite corner. And then the command window says give the roof orientation. The blue line indicates the position of the eaves. So if you move your cursor around, you'll see that you can tell the software where the eaves are. So of course they're at the they're on the outside of the projection here. So if you place your cursor over the back wall of the projection and then left click to indicate where the eaves are. So after a moment then you'll see the outline of the lean-to appears on screen, and you'll be given the option of drawing some additional items for the roof. Depending on the type of roof you've selected, there are different options available to you. So let's have a go at drawing the ceiling for our roof. So you'll see we've got two options here for a flat ceiling beneath a pitched roof. There's also an option for a vaulted ceiling for a cut roof as well. And then the middle option is for a ceiling beneath a flat roof face of a cut roof. So the one we're going to go for is the top option in this example. You could equally use a vaulted ceiling if that was appropriate for your job. So if we click where it says draw, the ceiling dimensions wizard opens up, and the one dimension you need to be aware of for drawing your ceiling, because your ceiling will appear in the 3D view. Make sure you get the height of the ceiling above floor level set correctly. So in this case we want to set it to 2.475. Make sure I put the decimal point in, 2.475 meters. Click finish. And then we need to follow the instructions on the command window. So it's telling us to give the start point of our ceiling. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate snap points at the corners of the ceiling, and we're just going to click around the perimeter of the ceiling. So it doesn't really matter where you start. You might want to zoom in while you do this kind of task so that you can make sure you're clicking exactly where you need to be. So if you can locate an end point on the internal corner of these walls here and click all the way around. Back to where you started. Then you'll need to press the escape key on your keyboard to drop that ceiling drawing tool. When you do that, the additional items dialog box opens up again to give you the opportunity to draw other additional items for your roof. Of course, you can work your way through the list, adding any other accessories that you need. But for now I'm going to click done. And whenever you're drawing anything like a roof, it's always a good idea to have a look at the 3D view and check you're happy that you've drawn the element correctly. So we can have a look at our lean-to roof there. If we want to, we could remove the roof. So if we go to visibility and untick the option where it says show roofs, and then we can have a look down. We could also hide the upper floor if we wanted to as well. So go back to visibility, and in the levels option there, if we untick level 2, got a clearer view of how that room looks now. We can see the ceiling in place there, placed at 2.475 meters above the floor level. So I'm going to make everything visible again. So we'll show our roofs and show level 2 again. So now that's the lean-to roof complete. Let's take a moment to save the drawing so that we don't lose any of our work, and then we'll move on to the next exercise. So I'm going to call this Upton Fields 8. So we'll now move on to exercise 13 and drawing the main roof. So I'm going to zoom out of my drawing and zoom in on the first floor plan. So in this exercise we're going to draw the main apex roof, and we're going to draw an apex valley roof. So when you're drawing a more complex apex roof with valleys, always start by drawing the main section of roof, and then you can add in any valleys as required. So on the Roofs and Attics tab, we're going to click on the Roofs drop-down menu, and this time we're going to select the tiled truss roof option, and we're going to select the typical truss roof template. In the Roof Dimensions wizard, we can set the roof pitch. Now for the main roof it's going to be 45 degrees, so we can overtype that. As before, we can review the thickness of the roof covering and the roof structure. Then click Next. And on page 2 we can review the soffit widths to the gables and the eaves. We can check the height of the barge board, the thickness of the barge board, and the height and the thickness of the fascias. We'll leave that set to the defaults for now, but if we click Next, as before, skip any pages that aren't relevant or any dimensional input boxes that aren't relevant. On page 4, check you're happy with the tile overhang, and once you've reviewed all of the dimensions relating to the drawing, click Accept Defaults. And in the roof type window, we need to select the roof type that we want to draw this time around. So this time we're going to select the top option to draw an apex roof. You would select this option to draw a standalone apex roof, to draw an apex valley, to draw an apex roof abutting a wall. All of those different roof configurations can be drawn using this top option. Now when we see the roof drawing method window, this time around we've only got one drawing method available to us. So depending on the type of roof you're drawing, there will be different options available to you. Whenever you're drawing a roof made up of sections of apex roof, you will need to use the rectangular section of roof drawing method, and that's because that's the way the software operates under the bonnet. If you want to draw an apex roof, you need to piece it together using rectangles. So as you did it in the previous exercise, because we're using the rectangular drawing method, you're going to start by drawing two opposite corners of the rectangle of roof, and then in this case you'll select the direction of the ridge. For our L-shaped roof that we're drawing here, we'll need to draw the roof in two sections, as I've already touched on. Firstly, you will draw the main apex, and then you will draw a rectangle for the apex valley, but we'll come on to that in a moment. So as there's only one drawing method, it's already been selected, so we can just click Finish. So PlansXpress is ready to draw the roof. As always, follow the command window. It's going to give you 3 instructions, because there are 3 steps to drawing a rectangular section of apex roof. So the first prompt is to give the first corner of the roof using the outer face of the wall. Now in this case we can see all 4 corners of the main rectangle of the roof. Clearly we can find snap points on there to click on, so it doesn't matter where we start. But just as an example, I'm going to start by clicking on the bottom left corner of the building. You should find an endpoint there on the outside of the wall, so click to place that first point. Then the command window to prompt you to give the opposite corner of the roof. So you can see your cursor is now controlling the shape of and size of that rectangle. So if you move your cursor up to the top right hand corner of the building and find that endpoint, and then click to place the opposite corner of the roof. The final instruction is to give the roof orientation. So if you move your cursor around, you'll see that your cursor is controlling the position of the roof ridge. So in this case we want it running horizontally across the screen. So once you can see the ridge in that position, click one final time and the roof will be drawn, and you can see from the 3D model there that it's appeared on there as well. So as is always the case when you're drawing a roof, the option to draw additional items will appear in the form of this Draw Additional Items window. We're going to click Done for now, and we're going to save drawing those additional items until we've finished drawing the roof. So if we have a quick peek at the 3D view, if we rotate it, if I rotate it around here, you'll see we've got the main apex roof in place, but we still need to put the valley on that front projection. So assuming the next section of roof is going to have the same specification, rather than going through the dimensions wizard again, we can click on the icon at the top of the roof's menu, and what that will do is it will take the specification options, the dimensions that you selected the previous time you drew a roof, and it will use those again. So just a bit of a time-saving tip there, just to click on the icon if you want to draw an element with exactly the same specification again. So as before, we're going to select the apex roof option, and as we touched on before, there's only one drawing method for an apex roof, so there's nothing to do here except click finish. You might want to spend a minute or two just reading through the explanation here. It tells you some important information about how you go about drawing apex roofs in different configurations. A crucial tip here at the bottom, which applies to the scenario we are drawing in our example, is that when you are drawing a section of room to form a valley, as in the diagram you can see here, you need to make sure that the rectangle you draw here extends all the way to the ridge, even though your valley won't obviously extend that far. When you're marking out the rectangle, make sure you extend all the way to the ridge, and that will ensure that the software draws a complete valley for you, assuming the geometry and the heights of the walls and the roof pitches is sensible. It will ensure you get that nice crisp valley, but we'll come back to that in a moment. So we've got the rectangular section of roof option selected because that's the only one available. Click finish, and the software is now ready to draw our next section of apex roof. So we're going to follow the on-screen instructions in the command window. So as before, it's instructing us to give the first corner of the roof on the outer face of the wall. So let's start by placing the first corner of the roof on the front right corner of the projection. Just move my drawing up a tiny bit. Just to recap, I moved my drawing there by holding down the scroll wheel on my mouse, so even though I'm about to draw something, I've still got that functionality with my scroll wheel to pan around the drawing page. So I'm going to click on this endpoint on the bottom right hand corner of the projection to give the first corner of the roof, and as before, you can see our cursor is now controlling the size and shape of this section of apex roof. So the next instruction on the command window is to give the opposite corner of the roof. Now this is the step where we need to take care. If when I draw this rectangle I don't extend the rectangle close enough up to the ridge, I may end up with a squared off top to my valley. That's what happens if the rectangle doesn't extend far enough up the slope of the roof. So what I suggest you do is hover your cursor over the bottom left corner of the projection. You should find an endpoint there, and when the snap point turns from blue to pink, that means you're using that X coordinate there to control the left to right position of this rectangle that we're drawing. So then, as I've done, extend your cursor up to the main roof ridge, and then click to place that opposite corner of the roof. So as before, the final step is to give the roof orientation, in other words, to select the orientation of our valley roof. So it's appearing as I want it here, going vertically across the screen. So once it's in the right direction, left click to place the valley roof. As before, the roof appears on the plans and on the 3D view, and the options to add additional items to the roof appears. So this time I'm going to add the ceiling for the main roof. So I'm going to select the option to draw a flat ceiling for the truss roof. The ceiling dimensions wizard opens up. As before, review the height of the ceiling above floor level and change that if needed. So I'm going to change that to 475 meters high. Click finish. And now, in exactly the same way as we did with the lean-to roof, we can click around the perimeter of the main apex ceiling to start with to draw that area of ceiling. So locate those endpoints. I'm going to drag my drawing page using my scroll wheel to make sure I'm being really precise with my clicking. It's quite easy to click on something that's slightly you can see there's a midpoint there that's just outside the perimeter of the ceiling, so if I click on that, my ceiling's not going to be quite square, so it's a good idea to zoom in and snap to those endpoints if you can. So as you saw there, I did around the main apex ceiling, and now I'm going to repeat for the valley ceiling as well. So click draw, view the height of the ceiling, and then I can just click around the perimeter of this. Trying to snap to that point just beyond the edge of the ceiling again, so zooming really is your friend when you're doing something like this, clicking around the perimeter. So once you've clicked around the perimeter, press the escape key. So now we've completed the ceiling, so I'm going to click done, zoom out there, we can double check that we've completed the whole ceiling. So just going back to what I was saying about drawing valley roofs and making sure that when you're marking out the rectangle, you extend it right the way up to the roof ridge. If I click on this valley roof here, I can show you what happens if you don't extend the rectangle far enough back to the ridge. So if, for example, I'd drawn my rectangle much smaller, you can see that we've ended up with that squared off section, which you can see quite nicely because the roof is currently highlighted in the 3D view. So if that does happen, if you don't extend the rectangle far enough back, if you select the roof, as I've done there, just by selecting, clicking on the roof lines, you can use these handles, so specifically this one in the middle in line with the ridge, to extend that rectangle, and then you can fix any issues you've got with your valleys there. As you can see in this case, we really don't need the rectangle to be quite as to extend quite as far back as it does, but it's just good practice to draw the rectangle longer to start with, and then you'll know that you are going to get that full valley in there. Okay, so that's the core components of exercise 13 done. If you refer to the software skills course materials accompanying the video, you'll see that there are some extension activities relating to the roofs, so you may want to draw some rainwater pipes. You might want to have a go at drawing the main roof as a cut roof rather than a truss roof, and have a go at using the purlin and binders and some of the other roof accessories which are available when you're drawing a cut roof. If you want to add any additional items to your roof, so say I'd finished drawing my ceiling, I'd click done to the additional items window, but then I realised that I did want to add some other roof accessories. You don't have to go through the process of drawing a whole roof to bring up those options again. They do actually exist in the roofs drop down menu as well. So if you click on the roofs drop down menu, so under our cut and truss roof options at the top, you'll see there's a large sloping roof accessories section, and within there you can find the ceiling options for a cut roof and a truss roof. You can find rafters for if you're doing a cut roof with a valley and you need to draw the rafters below the valley intersection. And and the same for if you need a wall plate in that scenario. Here you can find the binders and purlins struts, longitudinal bracing if you need it, flat roof upstand for flat roofs, rainwater pipes, so your down pipes if you want to place those symbols on your drawing. And the last option there is for if you need to estimate stripping a roof. So all of those additional roof items are found in that menu there. So if you wanted to go back and do your rainwater pipes, for example, you could do that there. Or if you realised you'd missed an area of ceiling, you could come back in here and select the relevant ceiling and carry on drawing it that way. Okay, so that's exercise 13 complete. So hopefully you're beginning to see now how you can copy your ground floor plan by creating a level and then copying the level to create your upper floors. And of course then you can adapt your plans, you can add windows as needed, draw your internal walls for your upstairs, place the suspended floor and so on. And then of course you can add your roof or different parts of your roof as needed depending on the configuration of the roof you're drawing. Okay, 2 seconds, I'm just going to get things set up for the quiz at my end and then we'll get started. So the first question was, what do I have to do before I can copy my ground floor to create the first floor? Do I need to set up a layer for the ground floor? Do I need to add a floor to the ground floor layout? Do I need to set up the ground floor level? Or do I need to create an elevation of the ground floor? So which of those things do I need to do before I can copy the ground floor? Do I need to set up a layer for the ground floor? Do I need to add a floor? So draw the floor, the slab, whatever, to the ground floor. Do I need to set up the ground floor level? Or do I need to create an elevation for the ground floor? It's a bit of a tricky question to start with. Have a think, cast your votes. Remember, it's all anonymous. It's all a bit of fun and it gives me an opportunity just to go over some of the key points. Okay, so the correct answer is actually the third answer there. You need to set up the ground floor level. So the level was the pink box that we drew around the ground floor that shows the boundaries of what to include in the level. And the level sets out the height of the floor. And it tells PlansXpress the order in which to stack the floors. So the answer is level. The level is what you need to set up before you can copy your ground floor to create your first floor. Okay, I'll close that one down. Okay, so carrying on with this theme of copying the ground floor, how do I copy the ground floor level? Do I need to right click on the level? So do you right click on the pink box? Do you select the level, middle click and click copy selection? Do you select the level, middle click and select delete entity? Or do you select the level, middle click and select modify? So if you want to copy that ground floor level that you've set up, how do you go about doing it? Give you a minute to have a think. Click on the answer you think is correct. Okay, so the correct answer for that one is answer number 2, which you have rightly clicked on. So yeah, you need to select the level, so left click to select it, then you click the middle click, so your scroll wheel on your mouse, and then you can click copy selection. That's how to copy that ground floor in order to create the first floor. Okay, brilliant, well done with that one. So the next question is, which elements should I copy across to the first floor? So you can select which of the elements you want to copy from the ground floor to the first floor. So should you just copy across the external walls and windows, external walls, windows and doors, external walls, windows, doors and internal walls? Or should you copy across whichever elements are useful in the first floor? Place your votes, please. So that's correct. You've all answered correctly. So it's the fifth option. You can copy over whatever elements are useful in your particular set of plans. Of course, you're always going to want the external walls there. You might want to copy over the internal walls as well. Windows are generally useful to copy, and then you can delete any that you don't need and add any extras that you do. External doors, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to want to copy those over. So just tick the relevant tick boxes to copy over the elements which are useful in your particular drawing. Okay, well done with that one. So we've got one more question for module 3. So what different roof shapes can you draw with PlansXpress? Can you draw apex roofs, hipped roofs, barn hip roofs, lean-to roofs, or all of the above? I think I finished with a nice, gentle, easy question at the end after the more complex ones. So that's right, you've all answered correctly. You can draw any of those roof shapes with PlansXpress. So once you've selected your roof type from the drop-down menu, and you have gone through the dimensions wizard, you're then given the roof shape selection window, and in there you can click on the type of roof that you want to draw. And that will determine the instructions that you're given on screen, which tell you what you need to click to draw the roof. Okay, brilliant, well done with that. So that's just a quick recap of module 3. So thanks for joining me. I'll send the videos over to you with the instructions and things as soon as possible, because I know you're both keen to play around a little bit more. So I'll get them over to you as soon as I can. Do practice as much as you can. Get in touch with us if you need any help with anything. Email support@hpexcel.co.uk or give us a call. Our next session is on Thursday. Thursday is all about adding detail to the plans. So we've done the bulk of the drawing of architectural items, and we're going to be looking at adding detail, like drawing the 2D elevations, adding dimension lines, and so on. Thank you for your time. As always, thanks for investing the time in our software and in a new way of working for you guys. I know it does take a bit of time, doesn't it, to get up and running, but I really appreciate you sticking with it. And as I say, I'll send the recordings over to you. Get in touch if you need any help with tech support, and I'll speak to you again on Thursday. All right, have a really good afternoon, a good day tomorrow, and I'll catch up with you on Thursday. Thanks a lot, guys.